Disconnect this connector right here, just push down on the tab and slide it out. There's the connector, and just push down on that. And there's a wire retainer further down. You want to take that off with the harness, and then another connector. You want to take that off as well. So I'm just going to use a trim tool, slide that off. Then the connector further down. This goes to the compressor. You want to take that off. And that connector will just slide down. Just wiggle it back and forth a little bit. There's a little tab on the bottom. You can push on that little tab, and then this whole connector will slide off. You don't have to disconnect the connector from each other, but you just want to slide it off the fan shroud. And slide that harness out of the way. Take these two screws out, use a 10mm socket. And grab the fan assembly, slide it out, and just wiggle it. And carefully slide it out. Disconnect this connector right here, just push down on the tab. And slide the connector off. And then you can disconnect the connector from this bracket. Just slide this little tab back. This will come off the bracket. Just like that. Now use a 10mm socket, take this bolt out. And the bracket's going to come with the bolt. And there's another bolt over here. Take this bolt out. There is a clamp that's in the way just because of the way it's positioned. You can use a hose clamp pliers and just move the hose clamp. Be careful, you don't want to do this if the vehicle is hot because there's going to be pressure in there. So I'm just going to move this. Underneath there's two 10mm bolts. You have to take those out. Use your 10mm socket. Take those two lower bolts out, and then you can slide the fan up and out of the way. And just carefully slide it out. And slide right up. It comes right out. Underneath, I'm going to put a drain pan, and there's a valve right here. You can open this valve to drain the coolant out. You want to make sure that the engine's cold when you do this. You don't want to do this when it's hot. And coolant's starting to drain out. Take the radiator cap off, and it'll drain a little faster. Now that's all drained out, I'll just close that valve. And then I'm going to move the drain bucket over to the other side. And I'm going to remove this coolant hose down below. Just use a hose clamp tool. And I have the drain bucket under on this side. Loosen up that hose clamp. You can slide that off. grab the hose, give it a twist, and slide it off. You might lose some coolant. Set that aside. Now we're going to remove these two hoses. You're going to want a different drain bucket because you're going to lose a little bit of transmission fluid. And you want to use a hose clamp tool on the bottom of that. And squeeze the hose clamp and just slide it down. Do the same on the other one. I just twisted that with the other hose clamp pliers to make it easier to use these ones. And slide that down. There's a retainer right here. You just want to use some needle nose pliers. Get behind the retainer, just squeeze that. Just slide it off the bracket. There we go. Now you can slide the hoses off, give them a twist, pop that out, just hold this up high. Maybe you won't lose too much fluid. Same with this one. A little bit of fluid. Just hold it up high. Now I'll take these top brackets off. I'm going to use a 10mm socket. And take the brackets off. You can slide this one up and out of the way. Now take the upper radiator hose off. Use the hose clamp tool. Slide the hose clamp down. Grab the hose, give it a twist. And slide it off. And this little hose, you want to take that off. You can use some small hose pliers or a pick. And just twist that off. And grab your radiator and just slide it up. And out of the way. Before you put the radiator in, make sure these little feet are down below here. If they're attached to the old radiator, you just pull them off and those go right there. There's two of those, one there and one there. Now slide the radiator in place. And there's two little tabs on the bottom that are going to go into where those little bushings are. Line those up and just push it down. Before we put the mounts on, I'm just going to hook the hoses up down below. It'll be a little bit easier. Hook the transmission hose up. Now I'm going to take this bracket off the old one. We'll transfer it to the new one. Use a 10mm socket. And it's going to go right here so that it can hold that transmission line on. And snug it down. Right there. And attach the transmission retainer. I'll put the lower coolant hose on. Move the clamp. And loosen up the clamp. Attach the coolant return hose or the reservoir hose. Line that up. And the upper radiator hose. And move the hose clamp. I'll put the brackets in place. Get the bolts started. Plug these down. And slide that under the hose. And it's in place. I did pop this clip out for the transmission cooler hose, just so the fan shroud can go right in between the hose and the radiator. Now I can pop that clip back in. Give you a little bit of extra room. Now we'll get all the bolts started. I'll start with the ones underneath. And the 2 bolts up top, get those started. Once those are all started, then we'll tighten those down. And just snug them down. Alright, that's tight. And you want to connect the connector. If you still have that bracket up here, you want to connect that, or this fan has the connector down here. So we'll plug that in right there. That's where the connector is, right there. So you want to plug that in, just like that. Now take the fan housing and line it up down below. Get the brackets lined up, put the bolts in. Make sure you have it lined up down below, and then tighten these down. Just snug, not too tight. Now line the connectors up. I'm going to put the AC compressor onto that bracket, just the connector for the AC compressor. and lock that down. And then the connector for the fan, line that up and lock it in. And where that little wire retainer is, you want to slide that into the hole and lock it down. Now you want to take the radiator cap off and you want to add the appropriate coolant. You can use a funnel, fill it all the way to the top, and then you want to fill up the reservoir over here. And there's a full line, a max line. You want to fill it up to that max line. You can put the cap back on, run the vehicle, get it nice and hot, run it for about 10 to 15 minutes. You can constantly check to make sure the engine's not overheating, and then shut the vehicle down, let it cool down, and then adjust the coolant level accordingly.